Okay, we're live.
We're live, so I can get going?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Calling to order the Marquette City Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. We can start with roll call. I'll go one by one. Commissioner Brooks?
Present.
Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Commissioner Primo?
Here.
Commissioner Middlefelt?
Yep.
And Commissioner Larson?
Here.
And Commissioner Cardillo is here.
So Aaron Andrews has an excused absence.
Okay. Moving on to the agenda. I know, Dave, you had had some pieces you wanted included in the agenda, some MDOT documentation.
We have three things to add. We didn't get the meeting minutes back and completed until yesterday. So we have meeting minutes of April 6th. I would like to also add in a sheet from the US 41 M28 corridor management plan concerning the 2090 South US 41 area and guidance from MDOT about commercial geometric design spacing for commercial driveways and that kind of thing as support material for the case.
Okay, are there any other changes or alterations to the agenda, or that's it? Okay, so if somebody wants to make a motion to approve the agenda with the additional items as called out by Dave, we can do that.
I move to approve the agenda with the additions.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Middlefelt. All in favor? Please say
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Then we move on to our minutes. Was everybody, I know we got them today, but if you were able to take a look at them, anybody have any comments? Seeing as how there are no comments, we can approve the minutes by consensus. At this time, if anybody has a conflict of interest, please let us know. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any conflicts of interest, so we can move on to our first public hearing, item 01 SUP 0421 2090 US Highway South 41.
On screen, I have the memo for the staff report. Staff has reviewed the special land use permit for a hotel motel use to bring the existing legal non-conforming hotel motel into a conforming use and to also include the existing single-family residence to be a hotel motel use, and a special land use permit for outdoor entertainment and community events as a principal use to be located at 2090 US Highway South 41. For the proposed outdoor entertainment and community events, they do not meet the required parking spaces for the size of the tent. Staff conducted a site visit on April 6, 2021, and it was found that some of the areas called out on the site plan that stated existing parking are not legal non-conforming parking spaces. In other words, they weren't gravel. Therefore, they do not have, and I'll show you a view of this so you can see, they don't have 20 parking spaces. And they're required to have 88 for the hotel motel use and the event use for the size of that proposed tent. So they state they have 90 existing spaces minus the 20 that they don't have equals 70 existing spaces. So they need to either reduce the size of the proposed tent or add a legal off-street parking lot to the site for 18 more parking spaces. Also, the Marquette County US 41 M28 Corridor Advisory Group reviewed the plans at their meeting on April 13th, and they recommended to close the center drive of the 3 existing curb cuts on the parcel. On screen, we're showing the staff report, their special land use permit application, their site plan review application, email and answers to the preliminary review. The fire department, no comment. Same for engineering. Zoning comments and their responses. The area map, the parcels outlined in blue. The block map, the parcels outlined in blue. And the existing photos of the site. And photos of the access drives. On screen, you'll see here showing a snapshot of the site plan. In this circle, the states of the parking here, but you'll see that this is not gravel area. So this area is not legal non-conforming parking. So that does not count. It's not a parking area. And up here, it's grass and it's called out for parking. And again, this area cannot count for parking. And then the site plan set. And the additional items, the access management plan and the spacing for commercial drives and streets from MDOT. Dave?
Right?
And then I did not receive any correspondence.
Okay, so that covers your
Mhm.
city staff presentation. Okay, Dave, you don't have anything to add to that? Andrea covered it.
Yeah, we've pretty much covered it. The comments in the staff report under these standards are what really, explains our recommendations or our analysis. And again, the site access is according to the corridor management plan, which does cover all of Marquette County. This specific area was an area of concern 10 years ago when the plan was put together. So the corridor advisory group, which consists of people from throughout Marquette County that are on M28 US 41, unanimously agreed with the recommendation from MDOT on that access drive situation. So that's the only other thing I'd like to, call out.
Okay, thank you. All right, we can hear from our applicant now if we've got anybody in the waiting.
I'm bringing them into the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Parker is the applicant.
Oh,
Good evening, Mr. Parker.
Good.
If you want to speak on behalf, you can do that at this time.
Do I want to speak on my behalf? Yes, I do. Is this the way you'd like to start the meeting
I'm
with
sorry.
comments from me?
Well, we just had a presentation from city staff presenting your application. And so now typically we would hear from the applicant if they have anything they want to add before we move on to correspondence and then public.
So you just had the city staff comment on this,
Mhm.
like right just minutes ago?
Well, you're not what? Yes. As
No, I've been waiting to get launched in here for the last 25 minutes and it just happened.
Okay, well, typically you would watch via YouTube and then Andrea will bring you in when it's your time to comment.
Okay. So, unknowing what those comments were prior, could
Just to
you
be clear,
just
it
fill
wasn't
me in a
comments, they
little
just
bit?
presented your application.
Okay, so they're just presenting the application. So I know that we have a few sticking points here. One being the parking. So the parking that I had proposed was for 90 existing spaces. They came back and said I only have 70 existing spaces, legally conforming spaces. That computes to a capacity in the event center of 105 people, down from what I wanted it to be at 150 down to 105. Now I could work with that. In the meantime, if I could work with 105, I could reduce the capacity of my event center and work on a conforming parking lot. I already put a down payment down on having a paved parking lot, but it's going to take some plans and to run that by you guys once that preliminary drawing is made. So that's what I would like to do to move forward here. Although I do disagree with some of the non-conforming parking spots where they said there isn't gravel, which there's clearly gravel. The grass is just starting to grow up through the gravel, but I will not dispute that at this time to not muddy the water, so I could please get going with this event center. As we know, with Gretchen Whitmer's recent announcement as of April 16th, indoor non-residential gatherings are limited to 25 people, where outdoor non-residential gatherings are limited to 300 people. This last wedding season was essentially terminated. And this is a really unique opportunity for my small business in this town. COVID absolutely destroyed the hotel business, which, I own the Birchmont Motel. And this year, with incorporating this wedding venue, it's really showing some promise. So we addressed the parking, and I could reduce the capacity. In the memorandum from the Planning Commission here, I have where it says specifically to reduce the size of the tent to accommodate these parking spots. I don't know if that means exactly what it says, or if I could just reduce the capacity. Now, the size of the tent was specifically designed so that people could social distance if need be, with the event size. Now, reducing the size of that, I don't think benefits anyone, nor does the city of Marquette want to go on record demanding that I reduce the size of the tent during COVID, when we're trying really hard to give people an ample amount of space to be a part if they so choose. Other than that, I don't understand from the M2841 Corridor Alignment Committee closing the main entrance into this business that's been here for decades and decades. Could you please fill me in on that?
Well, we have information within our application that the Corridor Advisory Group recommended the closing of the Center Drive, and it appears with some supporting documentation that we have that that's based on the speeds of the highway and then recommended distances between curb cuts. And Andrea, you can correct me if I'm not explaining this clearly. And so their recommendation from what I'm guessing is a safety perspective is that the openings between the curb cuts should be at, I believe it was 455. I'll have to find that.
Yes, it is 155 feet, center to center access. And
Commissioner, Dave Stensis, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I can elaborate a little bit. The corridor management plan has been in place for about 12 years. And prior to that time, throughout the county, there really wasn't a plan for access management. And all the jurisdictions in the county agreed to this plan by which whenever new projects are brought forward, whenever roads are reconstructed or resurfaced, that those jurisdictions in coordination with MDOT look at all of those projects and find, curb cuts, excessive curb cuts that can be eliminated because they're hazardous. And this is one that probably, that property's been there since the 19th century. There's been people living there. And who knows how long that curb cut's been there, but this is just like anything else. With city code, with the zoning, when you develop something new, you have to meet the standards that are in place at the time. So the fact that it was non-conforming for 30 years is now a moot point because it's been looked at now for the new development. And that's the decision that's just state guidance that's what you do. And it's interesting because the site plan itself shows an existing driveway from the northernmost curb cut. So if there is truly an existing driveway there, this shouldn't be an issue. And it shouldn't be an issue anyway, because that's the state guidance for highway safety.
Well, that northernmost driveway has never been used ever. It's not paved. It'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a paved road from that spot. I have a paved road going right to it that's been used forever. Now you want to open up a curb cut that's never been used. You could shut that thing down because it's not used anyway. It's not paved. It's this existing curb cut that's worthless. Now you're shutting down the right smack dab the entrance into my motel, right smack dab the entrance into the event center, the proposed event center. I just cannot see how this is productive at all. And then, then this, if that were to be the case, if I do have to build a road from this other curb cut, that's going to take a year. This wedding season is shot. There's just no timely way to get this possibly done.
The requirement isn't to build a road, it's to build a driveway.
So a gravel driveway is okay?
A driveway that, yes, a gravel driveway is okay.
No, it's not an asphalt driveway, but not to the road standards. Like you're thinking, I believe it has to be an asphalt driveway.
So it does or does not have to be an asphalt driveway.
It has to be an asphalt driveway. It can't be gravel.
Sorry.
That's my point exactly. There's no way I could possibly pull that off.
We could probably make an exception for gravel until you can pave it for some intermediate time. But that's the standard for access management. You're adding hundreds of visitors to the site on given days. And that's what's looked at there.
Well, do I need any special permission at all to put a vent tent up and hold an event on this property?
Yes.
Yes.
How so? Because first off, with this parking thing, I'm positive that I am being spot enforced here, because I went down to their mod inn, counted all their parking spots today, did the calculation for the numbers of rooms they have and their capacity of their event centers, 320 at the Holiday Inn. They don't even have close to the amount of parking that they're supposed to have. The yacht yard down here at the lakeshore, they could just willy-nilly have throw up party tents and have weddings whenever they want. They don't have a single parking spot. I have 37 acres. That isn't enough parking for you people. It's unbelievable. Now you want me to, what? This is okay. I'll tell you what. What consists of shutting down this middle driveway? Should I be in there with my excavator digging it up tomorrow morning? Do I need to put a barricade out there?
MDOT can give you the specs for how to do that.
Huh. Okay. Putting aside the fact that I have to close down the main access to my property here, what about the rest of the conformities? The 70 conforming parking spaces, can I get allowed to start off with events at 105 person capacity, which is what the 70 spaces calculates to?
Well, to be clear, the proposal that from your architect was off of 54 parking spaces for a 200 occupancy. So if you wanted to reduce it more, we can talk about that. That was one of the conditions that we put down. If you want to reduce the occupancy per the parking you have, you would be able to do that.
Okay. I don't want to by any means reduce the occupancy, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm allowed to do here.
So you applied for 200 to be the occupancy and you don't have the parking for 200. You'd have to add 18 more parking spaces.
Okay, so with the parking that I do have, can we go on the record saying how many that I am available to have? What occupancy am I available?
You'll have to
have?
give me, I'll have to run a calculator and you'll have to give me some time to calculate that. So if you want to discuss something else when I'm doing that, if you had anything else to discuss.
So just so the commission's clear, you know, it looks like one way or the other, we're going to need to add a condition. And the condition is either, and we're willing to work with you, Mr. Parker, either the condition is that you come back with an amended plan showing 18 additional paved spots, or you come back with an amended plan showing reduced capacity. Is that correct? So it's one of those two options.
$2,200.
Yes, one of those two options. I could do those.
But I mean, you should we're willing to go, we have to choose one. And I think if you give us your preference, then that will certainly be taken into consideration in our deliberations.
So if I come back with an amended plan that I'm going to reduce the capacity for the already conforming spots, and then that'll give me time to actually get a civil engineer out there, design a parking lot, have it paved, so on and so forth. Then I could come back and essentially apply again for a higher capacity.
I believe so. Andrea, does that?
Well, to do a higher capacity, you'd have to come back to the planning commission. There's a way you could do this without coming back to the planning commission is if you revised what staff has asked is if administratively for us to review and you not have to come back to the planning commission, you had a choice of revise your plan to show the 18 off-street parking spots. And then you would have your site plan has to be completed within a year. Or you could reduce the occupancy for what you have and revise the plan to meet the 54 parking spaces, which is 162 occupants.
Okay, so the number that I have right now is 162.
For the parking spaces for the occupants, you could do 162.
Okay.
But if you want the 200, then you would have to add them.
I could live with 162. Most weddings are 150. I could 162 will work for me. So bear with me for 1 second here. So 162 is my current capacity. And what do you need? Go ahead, Andrea. Did I just cut you off?
No, well, I was just going to ask Andrea, in the event that he did want to do the paving option, how long would he have to amend his plans?
Well, we would just, if that was his plan, he would let us know and I would hold on to it for him to amend it. If you guys approved it to be administratively reviewed. In other words, the plan wouldn't have to come back to you guys to review it.
So I just want to make sure you understand, Mr. Parker, what your options are. So one option would be for you to go back to your designers, your engineers, architect and say, we need to revise these plans and resubmit them. If the planning commission tonight were to approve it, saying amended to, you know, to add 18 paved spaces, you could come back with your plans. At which point you would not have to come back before the planning commission to ask for the additional capacity, right? And you would have, I think, Andrew, you said you have a year to put that paved parking spots in, correct? The alternative is we could approve it tonight based on an amended capacity. So we would say your capacity is less than you initially requested. So that would be an amendment to this application. And so at that point, if you did later on want to add those parking spots, just so that you clearly understand, you would have to then come back to the planning commission to ask again. You would have to go through this process another time to ask for those additional spaces. So I just want to make sure you're clear on what your options are.
Okay, thank you for that, Joy. I would like to try to get an approval tonight on the amended capacity.
Okay.
Would another, so you're saying for the 162,
Yes,
but would you ever want to do the 200?
I would certainly like to, yes. But I think looking into the future for that would be a lot more advantageous than continuing with this. I got brides that want to get married here this year, and if I have to tell them no, that's just something that I don't want to have to do. So I would take the 162 current capacity.
162 people.
Okay. All right, so I think we've covered your speaking with our applicant. Is there anything else you want to add, Mr. Parker, before we move on to the next piece of this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, you said we don't have any correspondence for this?
No, but there was a person for public comment.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and bring that person in?
Okay, I'm bringing them in now.
Hi, Ms. Lasich.
Hello.
Hi, you can go ahead for your public comment. We like to keep them at about 3 minutes, so I'll let you know, please.
Oh, sure. I'll make it
No,
quick.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, you said we don't have any correspondence for this?
No, but there was a person for public
Okay.
comment. Nicole, you'll need to mute your YouTube.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How
No
do
worries.
I?
Okay, I'm bringing them in now.
Hi, Ms. Lasich.
Yes.
Hi, minutes, so you can go ahead for your public comment. We like to keep them at about 3 minutes, so I'll let you know. Please.
Oh, sure. I'll make it quick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, you said we don't have any correspondence for this?
No, but there was a person. Nicole, do you want to mute your YouTube?
I-
Mute your.
Right. Okay. Does that work? Is that
Yeah.
better?
I think
I'm so
Thank you.
sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so I just wanted to say I'm a local wedding planner. I've had my business since 2012. And I guess I just wanted to reach out and say, I hope Park Place gets to go through. I've definitely noticed a steady increase in my destination clients since I first opened. So I think it would be great to boost tourism and the local economy, and also it'd be great for the community for future nonprofit events. I know I have a lot of clients right now who are nervous about the 25 capacity for indoor banquet facilities, and they are looking for a place to move their weddings to. And with the limited outdoor venue spaces, well, we had to move 2020 into 2021. And if I have to move 2020 and 2021 into 2022, I might just cry. So I guess I was just saying how great Park Place would be and a wonderful lifesaver to my local clients as well as my out of town destination brides. That's all.
Great, thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And you can listen in on YouTube if you'd like to continue listening.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've finished our public testimony. Does anybody want to suspend the rules for discussion? At this time, Mr. Parker, if you want to just put yourself on mute, typically now would be when the commission kind of discusses your application. And if we have any questions, we'll let you know.
Motion to suspend the rules for discussion?
Can we get a second?
Second.
Commissioner Dunn seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. You want to start, Commissioner Middlefelt?
Yeah, I think I just maybe wanted to clear up maybe a misconception or a different perception of what our planning commission does for Mr. Parker, because we by no means are trying to limit development or shut businesses down. And it's the opposite. We want to see small businesses like yours flourish. But we also want to make sure that those 162 new guests, when they come out of the wedding venue, that they're safe and that we can design traffic and stuff appropriately. So I just wanted to say that nobody is against this by any stretch of the imaginations. I felt like there was a little bit of anger or hostility towards what we're trying to do here, but I think we're kind of on the same team. We want to see economic development in our community and businesses like yours flourish. And I think you're right. Outdoor venues for weddings is a great idea for the season. And yeah, I didn't have any major issues with the plan except for the parking and the traffic concerns that the committee, highway committee had presented. Those do seem like important and legitimate public safety concerns, but if that can be addressed by some of the changes and the willingness to reduce capacity to 162, I think we could move this forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Dunn, do you want to add?
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around what a condition would look like for this. And if we were to say that the applicant needs to come back with an amended plan, I mean, is that something that just gets handled through staff? I don't want to have to make the applicant come back again and do the whole thing all over again if it's a simple matter of amending the plan.
Right. So I think the way it would work, and that's what we were trying to suss out in terms of his options, is that we would tonight basically put conditions, it sounds like there's one or two conditions, one being to reduce the capacity and two being to potentially close that center curb cut. And then that could be done. He could make those amendments. And then at that level, it would be dealt with through staff. So he wouldn't have to come before us again,
Okay.
as long as staff deems that he fulfills those amendments. Is that correct, Andrea?
Correct.
Okay.
Good. And then I guess the other comment that I would have is that, as far as this curb cut situation, I want it to be clear that that's not something that the city or staff or anybody else on our team made up. That's something that's coming from MDOT and coming from the corridor advisory. So that's not really this commission. That wasn't us that came up with that, but it is our job to make sure that gets followed. So yeah, and I think that's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Primo.
Yeah, I guess I'm totally confused. First off, sounds like the applicant don't realize that it would be a lot easier for him just to allow his plan to be amended instead of starting all over. He could just let Andrea do that as administratively. Doesn't have to be done tomorrow morning. So he could get his 200 or whatever capacity he's looking for by adding the parking spaces. All he has to do is say he's going to do it. He doesn't have to have that plan totally drawn up, I don't think. When he gets it drawn up, you can take it to her and she'll say yes. She has to. The other thing I don't understand is on that highway advisory committee, is it advisory or are they the law? I'll have to ask Dave. I mean, are they the law? They can come along and say, this is what you're going to do, hell or high water, or are they simply an advisory committee saying this would be nice? Because the other problem you're going to run into with MDOT, which is very costly when they get into this, oh, you need a deceleration lane. You need all kinds of crap to meet their specifications. I don't know. I can't see a board who's supposed to be advisory being able to make the law and say, no, this is the way it's going to be, unless that's the way it is. I don't know. Dave could answer that.
Okay, so the corridor group is, as I said, the jurisdictions all agreed that they would weigh in on these issues and follow the guidance that MDOT provides. So MDOT gets their guidance from the Federal Highway Administration. This kind of guidance is pretty standard across the country. And if we don't follow it in this case, what's the purpose of having a corridor advisory group? What's the purpose of having the rules, the guidance at all, if local municipalities aren't going to follow it? It's designed based on traffic safety data. It's designed based on crashes, real life stuff. Yeah, I've worked in that field for a while. I mean, they're evaluating crashes and what is going to make roads safer. We're talking about people getting killed in T-bone accidents on highways.
Yeah, so what?
It's going to be costly, yes, to build a driveway there, but it's going to be a lot more costly if you have a family get creamed pulling out on the highway there and you have somebody killed. That's not going to be a good thing for anybody's business or for the local municipality or for families or anybody. So this isn't just academic stuff. This is all based on highway data. This is the guidance that keeps people safe. So we have an obligation to follow that and put it into our requirements.
Okay, I'll go along with that, except I mean, when you're coming from the south, you got to cross 2 lanes of traffic coming at you from Marquette, no matter which driveway you're going into. Whether you're going to the center one, the end one, or where, you're still crossing those 2 lanes.
So you have conflict points for every access point on the highway. You've got, several different conflict points when the car pulls out into the road. It can cross the highway, it can stay on the same side, but when you have multiple curb cuts right next to each other, it's multiplying the conflict points. And it's making it harder for people to see in front if there's cars pulling out. If there's cars coming down the highway at full speed, they're not necessarily going to see a car that's in front. It creates just more hazards. And so this isn't something that the city's going to.
So it is not an advisory committee then, it's a committee that sets the law. This is it, take it or leave it.
I would say maybe the analogy is such that, we, the planning commission, are an advisory committee to the city commission in so much as we have an in-depth knowledge of the land development code. And they've charged us with our understanding of that land development code to make recommendations to them on the premise that we know and have studied this document. I think similarly, this what is the name of it?
Where in the land development code is that stated?
It's not stated in the land development code. There's nothing there. Well, in the community master plan that you guys adopted, though, has more than a full page on corridor access management. So our community master plan is the guidance and that is where we get the land development code rules from, right? It's
Okay.
based on our master plan. But there's nothing specific in the LDC about the corridor management group. The city signed a memorandum of understanding with MDOT that we were going to participate in that corridor group. And if we just start saying, you know, these rules don't apply to us, what good does that do us?
Well, again, you're saying advisory group. They are not an advisory group then. At that point, they'd be just like the BZA, a pseudo judicial group who just says, this is what we're doing, period.
Well,
We're gonna sit here and vote and decide whether we want to take that advice into account as we make this decision.
Well, you'll outvote me, so go ahead. I don't care. I'm just bringing up a question. And I know what happens with MDOT. And I know the costs that these things can rack up because I have to do it all. And I know how crazy it gets. So, you know, you can say anything you want. If you had 150 cars coming to get in at the same time, there's going to be 150 cars in that from the south, 150 cars in that center lane, all the way back through Harvey to, you know, Marquette Township there, waiting to get across, especially at the right times of day when you got 200-300 people leaving the medical center or the college or whatever, heading home. You can't even cross the highway. So I don't know. I'll give up. I don't care. There's a lot of things that come into play after the fact, which I don't think any of you are privy to. If you were, you might think a little differently. That's my comment, Joy. That's it.
Okay,
Goodbye.
thank you, Wayne.
Yeah.
We will take that into account.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Commissioner Larson?
Yeah, I guess, you know, my question as far as the corridor and, you know, and just trying to get it and read through kind of those recommendations. Does Mr. Parker have any recourse to suggest an alternative? You know, if he wanted to keep that center open, but to close the other two driveways, you know, if that the center is his main line, can he recommend that? You know, if there's an issue with distance, I'm just thinking that, you know, just wondering if there's an alternative to that. Because to Wayne's point, in some ways, and again, I don't study traffic, but I mean, if there's an issue with having multiple curb cuts in this particular location, and I know Mr. Parker hasn't suggested this, I'm just asking the question, can he come back with an alternative and say, you know what, the main entrance really is the important one, and those two side entrances aren't as important to my business. You know, I'd rather keep that and have a road that goes up to the house and so on from there. Is that an opportunity that he can come back and ask or come back to that advisory board with to avoid potentially some of the issues with, you know, paving a new road?
So the issue is you have two curb cuts that are less than 300 feet apart. So that's what, about 2/3 of the recommended distance for two curb cuts to be apart. If you want to eliminate one of the southernmost curb cut and have one entrance to the property, that does eliminate that issue and doesn't require any other action. But you'd have to close that cut, just like they're saying you need to close this middle one if you're going to have access to this site from another curb cut that's already there. So there's 3 curb cuts.
So to follow up on that, he could close he could close the other one and still potentially have the middle curb cut remaining.
We would have to close the 2 outer ones.
Yes. You have to leave the other one as is with it, no access road driveway, and close the southernmost access point.
Just the southernmost access.
That would meet the guidance. The guidance says you can't have 2 that are less than 455 feet apart on a road that's more than 50 miles an hour serving the same property. So you eliminate the one, if that's what he'd like to do, that we've never discussed that was never presented to us. And as I said before, the site plan actually shows an existing driveway from that northernmost curb cut. But as we found out, it's not there.
Joy, if I may, I only bring it up because it sounded like, it was a little bit of a surprise to Mr. Parker that we were saying that the guidance came back, said that he would need to close the main access or the curb cut that's used as his main access to his business. And so if there's an opportunity for an alternative there, I don't know if that's something Mr. Parker has considered, or if that's something we can ask Mr. Parker if he has considered, an alternative to, closing, those curb cuts to potentially avoid, more prohibitive situation to yourself, whereas, building a road or paving a road and so on and so forth. I guess that's a question. I don't know if we can answer.
It's a question we could ask Mr. Parker. I mean, there's a couple of ways we could deal with it. We could also word our amendment such to just say, that the applicant must amend so that they do not have the 450, so that they don't have any entrances within 455 feet of each other, which would leave him open to come up with any variety of creative solutions as long as.
But you need to have a site plan that's approved. We can't leave this meeting with an unanswered access issue.
So, I guess I'm skeptical because I know the southern one goes directly into the Birchmont Motel, so I'm doubtful he'd want to lose that one. But let's ask Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker, is what Commissioner Larson is saying appealing to you in any way?
There's no way I could remove the one that goes essentially right into the motel. I think we could all agree on that. That needs to be there. The second one has to be there. That's where the paved road is, it's grandfathered in. The MDOT cut that was made, it goes to the motel, so there's a circle driveway. Otherwise, I can't accommodate any 18-wheelers or anything, because that's the only way that they could go through is to pull through on that circle drive. So now we're seriously limiting who I can accommodate in my motel. So you're immediately ripping out my middle driveway, and because why? Because of some advisory committee that I never was even informed that this advisory committee was meeting on my topic. I feel like if you're going to make, about $500,000 change to somebody's property, you should at least be advised of that to be able to represent yourself in some way. So, whether I could take legal action against this whole thing, I just think it's absolutely insane. I will not close that middle curb cut. There is just absolutely no way. I'd rather bulldoze that house into the ground and be done with this. And I feel like we completely skipped over the main reason this whole application was made is so I could use that house as short-term rental as the 30th room, essentially a suite on my motel. That's all I really wanted to do with all this. And it has gone in such a direction. It's insane. I mean, you know what MDOT's going to charge me for the curb cut? To redo that curb cut, probably put a deceleration lane in, build that road, hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably the net worth of the whole facility.
Okay,
this is
I understand, Mr. Parker. We need to keep this moving along. So we understand, you've already expressed this earlier. So we just wanted to ask a question to Mr. Larson's proposal. Thank you.
And a deceleration lane is not required. That was discussed.
Why wasn't it in a report?
What report? You don't have a report. I'm telling you, I was at the meeting and it was discussed.
Yeah.
And MDOT will make some kind of a formal submission to their main office on that, but the minutes of the meeting will be available shortly. And I did inform the applicant's architect and surveyor and himself, I believe, that this meeting took place before it took place last week. I did provide that information.
Okay.
Was I copied on that? Can you prove that? Because I never received that.
We'll look at it. You've had people contacting us, a variety of people contacting us about this project, and whether or not supposedly representing you.
Well, I did have to hire an architect because you certainly wouldn't, no common man could possibly get anything passed through this planning deal. So yeah, I did have to hire an architect. I think I hired the worst one on the planet, to be honest with you.
No.
So, I mean, from jobs in my construction company that he's done, I should have known better than to hire him. I'm sure Wayne could weigh in on that.
No, I can't.
Okay, well, I'm trying to keep this, let's keep this moving on everybody's behalf here.
So going back to what Wayne said, I would like to just approve, on an amended capacity, so I could keep the 200. I can make a parking lot. That's not a problem. So why don't we revisit that?
Okay, so to be clear, you want us to approve the additional, you're gonna submit an amended plan, which will be approved administratively to provide an additional paved 18 spaces.
Correct.
Andrea, does that make sense to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Larson? Yes.
And by doing so, though, that brings this into conformity, which then that's why we are discussing the curb cuts. I'm correct.
I think the curb cuts are totally separate.
Yep, you're right.
The curb cuts are based on the traffic on Highway 41. And they're irrelevant of the parking spaces.
Speak up.
So I'm looking at the suggested condition in the staff report, and it looks just fine to me the way it is. I don't think that it's missing anything. So I'm ready to make a motion if you guys have looked at that. I guess the only thing that it doesn't take into consideration is the option of doing the single middle driveway, because the way
It
that
doesn't sound like the applicant is interested in that option, so I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
That could become an issue because that's what he's thinking right now in the heat of the battle. Wait till the battle's over, let him decide.
Do you want me to put the recommended staff condition on the screen so everyone can see it?
Sure. That would be helpful. Thanks, Andrea. I'm looking at it. It's page 3, right?
All right, can you see it now?
Yep.
So I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead. And then we'll see if we have a second.
After review of the site plan dated March 22nd, 2021, and the staff report for 01 SUP 0421, the Planning Commission finds that the request meets the intent and requirements of the Land Development Code, sections 54-1403, 54-635, and 54-1402, and hereby approves 01 SUP 0421 with the following condition: that an amended plan is submitted to meet the parking requirements. So that would be an additional 18 parking spaces. And implementation of the site access recommendations of the Marquette County US 41 M28 corridor advisory to close the middle access drive on the parcel and create a driveway from the northernmost access drive. And that this amended plan may be administratively reviewed by staff.
Second.
Sorry, I lost. Is that Commissioner Middlefelt
Sarah
seconded?
second. Yep.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Dunn, second by Commissioner Middlefelt. Wayne, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think he should have the option. He's got to be X amount of feet apart with his curb cuts. He should be able to do that. If that means he can move to hell with the advisory committee. If he's have to be, what, 495 feet or whatever it is, if he wanted to change it, so he's got 495 feet and still come sort of straight in, he'd be allowed to do it. So in other words, if he could go say he'd have to go north a few feet, and he'd have a very short road to put in. He'd have exactly what he's trying to do. I mean, to say they have to follow the committee's report when he has options, we should allow him to do whatever option he wants to do. When there's an option, you have an option. If you say you got to do this, bam, that's it. That's not right.
So do you want me to put the site plan on screen so everyone can see? Because Wayne, are you talking about just relocating the existing middle curb cut to make it 495 feet and then tie into the existing paving?
I don't have the
as an
plan
option?
because I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, but
Yeah, do you want me to share the plan?
Sure,
On
go
screen.
ahead and do that, Andrea, please.
I actually agree with Wayne, but I think we should vote down the motion that I just made if we're going to change it rather than.
I guess my only question is I sort of mentioned that earlier, and Dave, we need to have a site plan approved, so it can't be sort of some abstract thing of what's going to happen. Is that correct?
that site plan isn't showing closing that thing right now.
Sorry, say that again, Wayne. I didn't hear that.
I don't believe the site plan shows that curb cut being closed right now. It just shows that it's there.
Right, but the motion sort of indicates a very specific action, which, as opposed to sort of, because I originally suggested let's do something a little more open-ended so he can come back with some kind of creative solution. But I don't think, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, that we can do something that kind of open to interpretation.
Yeah, I
for the
don't
site
think,
plan.
I don't think that's good practice.
Commissioner Larson?
I would. I mean, it would be a condition of approval. I think we make conditions of approval all the time. We're saying, following, guidelines and updating it to that 490, or Wayne is suggesting updating it to that 490. And I would agree, with that and allowing, some measure of decision making, on Mr. Parker's part to come into compliance with that.
Yeah, you know what, as I'm looking at this, I mean, that's exactly, so that portion that says to close the middle access drive, that wasn't something from staff. That sounds like that was the exact recommendation of the advisory. And so now I'm changing my tune from a second ago, because I don't have the expertise to change what the corridor advisory committee is saying. So if that's what they recommend, that's what I think we should go with.
So you're standing by the motion as you made it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, did we have a second on that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We had Commissioner
Sure.
Middlefelt. All right, do we go ahead and vote on this? And if it doesn't pass, then we can see where we're at. Is there any other discussion you guys want to have about this? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. Okay. Commissioner Brooks?
Yay.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Primo?
No,
Commissioner Middlefelt?
Yes.
Commissioner Larson?
No.
And I vote in favor. So what did we?
so we didn't accomplish a damn thing.
Got a 4-2 vote in favor.
The guy is screwed. I don't know how you do it.
So your vote passes.
So the vote passes. All right, Mr. Parker, thank you. We do wish you all the best with your business, and we look forward to having this as part of our community. And you can work together with Andrea and Dave to make the amendments as requested.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well.
He got screwed. Well,
Well, he doesn't have any options then.
no,
They voted away his options.
I,
Okay. Do we have any citizens wishing to address the commission on agenda items? No? Andrea, we don't have anybody looking to address,
Oh, sorry. No, I'm looking at, no, I don't see.
okay. We have no old business, we have no new business. It doesn't look like there's anybody to address the commission on non-agenda items, so we can go to the planning zoning division report.
Any questions? Okay.
Oh, there it is. Anybody, any comments? Commissioner Brooks?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that our last meeting, Dave brought up about possible safe corridor for the bike path that basically where Craig Street ends. Once you cross the highway there, the bike path starts right next to the Superior Collision there, where the creek runs through. So I walked back there and checked it out, and if there were a safety corridor, I would think that would be a really good option on just looking where the bike path ends there. And what's interesting about it too is, so if you were to take the bike path there, then it just ends by your collision there. But there is no actual like walking access then up to the corner where you actually have the crossing edge and 4128 there. So once that's being discussed, that might be brought up too, that, maybe a pathway from the end of the bike path, go up to the corner of Genesee, because that's where you actually push the button to cross the highway.
Okay,
That's it. Just
Thank you.
just bringing that up from the last meeting.
Thanks. All right, let's carry on with the comments then. Commissioner Primo? Wayne, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Wayne. Wayne, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
How am I now?
There you go.
Okay, anyway, I'm just curious if you would have an option, if you needed to go to that committee, the Traffic Advisory Committee, and say, look, I'm gonna move this down another, and I'll have to go look at that plan again, but move it down, 20 feet, 100 feet. And I still come into my business the way I want to, but if I understand it right, because that's the way the motion was made, no matter what, you can't do that. Or does he have somewhat of an option? Because it's really hard for people when you're in a meeting and you get, everything's flying around and you're trying to make sense. It's difficult, but once you get to go sit down and think about it for a little bit, maybe for 10, 15,000, he can have what he wants, only a little farther down to meet the distance between. Or do we just block them out of that?
Andrea, what are your thoughts on that process-wise?
Well, I think, if it had just stated to close the middle access drive, and then discuss with MDOT a revised plan, that may have been, but that's not what was made.
I know, that's a mistake. But we do a lot of them, so. Just one of many. There's got to be flexibility in what we do.
If he had wanted to close the other drive by the motel, that would have been an option. There wouldn't have been a situation where he had to close one. I mean, the situation as I explained, it doesn't meet the standard. So if he had closed, and I get it, that you're talking about two main access drives. I mean, which one's the main drive? They can't both be the main drive.
He's talking about one that goes directly to those buildings. Those buildings were put up in the 70s. And it was a school teacher from Gwynn. They were built by Dickinson Homes on Iron Mountain, if you want a little history. And Paul Umari designed them. That's where that T-shaped house came in. And we put all the foundations in. So that's how long that's been there. But my point is, I don't have that plan. How many feet would he have to move north on that second drive to become a legal drive, Dave?
It's really close to where the existing northernmost drive is. It's not
Okay.
that, it's probably not that far. I mean, maybe a little more than halfway, but there's
Okay.
maybe 250 feet to the next. It's probably about 250 feet to the north from the middle.
Okay. But again, if you had an engineer out there and somebody that's doing a little thinking, they might be able to come up with a practical idea that would work for him at a reasonable cost. That's all I'm saying. That's my comment, Joy. Go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Middlefelt.
Yeah, just wanted to let you folks know, for my environmental policy class, students are researching strategies to help Marquette become carbon neutral by 2050 that align with the community master plan. So they've taken some of the strategic actions that are listed in our community master plan, and they're trying to quantify, by investing in the, cycling infrastructure and what Eric was talking about, like how much carbon could we actually sequester? What would it cost? Looking at different options. And we'll see what they come up with. That's kind of their big final project, but they're so excited and they're really pumped. And I don't know, I hope to have some kind of memo that I can synthesize and bring to you all. Commissioner Hill came and spoke to the class and really got them all excited. So we're excited to see where that could lead.
Great.
I can't hear.
Commissioner Larson,
No comment.
Commissioner Dunn.
No comment.
Okay, and none here. How about you, Andrea?
No comment.
Okay, sorry, Dave.
Okay, I'd like to follow up with some things from the last meeting that I told you I would follow up with you about. One thing we talked about was that crossing of M553 at the ski hill. And I talked to our contacts at our MDOT service center here, and they had
Can they see
some
it?
contact with the owner of the ski hill. They had heard through the city about complaints, one or two complaints about near misses there. And of course, that site has been the site of a fatal accident several years ago.
Right. That was stupidity.
Could you please mute yourself, whoever is speaking? So we kind of looked at the corridor, the way it's laid out. The actual right of way for the corridor butts up against the farthest point of the building that sticks out towards the corridor. So it actually is almost at the building's edge. So, one of the things I was thinking is that maybe the MDOT could agree to have something where people are kind of funneled to a point where they have to, like a railroad crossing. If you've ever seen a bike path cross a live rail grade, sometimes they use barriers, so you have to stop. You can't just coast through a live railroad crossing. You have to go through a turnstile often. I thought maybe they could do something like that, but since that building is right there, you couldn't put anything on that side, any kind of fixed objects, because it's in the right of way. You're right there. You step out of the building, you're practically right in the right of way, even though there's a little access drive in front of the building and a small strip of like grass with a curb before you are in the highway. On the other side, there's a little more room between the highway and the parking lot. So kind of what we thought was what would make the most sense is for the property owner to put something at to funnel people to a point where you come out of that parking lot to the highway and you have to stop and think before you enter the highway. Something that forces you to either a turnstile or just something that's real in your face. Hey, you're about to step into a 55-mile-an-hour highway. According to MDOT, they can't do anything to slow traffic down through there. And that's what they say. And part of that's just the unfortunate topography you've got there. You've got bad sight distances coming around curves, downhills. So people have gravity pulling them faster down into the valley. And it's just an unfortunate place to have an overflow parking lot. So it's really kind of incumbent on the property owner, because there's not a whole lot that the state can do to slow traffic down coming through there because of the way, I don't know if you guys understand the way they set speed limits, but there's a formula that is used everywhere for state and federal highways that basically makes it impossible to take a speed limit from a higher to a lower speed limit. It's called the 85th percentile calculation. So they look at, if they put traffic counters in the road, they take all of the traffic that comes by a certain point. They look at the speed of all those cars, the volume of cars with the speed. If the traffic of the 85th percentile is above the speed limit, they will not reverse the speed limit. The only thing that ever does is ratchet up the speed limit when they do 85th percentile studies. It never brings it down. So once they set it at 55, unless, everybody in that community just, gets really, really old and quits driving or starts driving really slowly and nobody goes fast anymore, the 85th percentile speed is always going to be at or above the speed limit. And oftentimes that's how you get speed limits that go from 55 to 65 or 65 to 70, because they look at the 85th percentile, and if they can statutorily raise the speed limit, they will, because they determine that that's the safe speed to travel. The 85th percentile speed has been determined by God at the traffic agency to be the safe speed limit for that road. And you can't fight that. The only way the only place you can change a speed limit is in a local jurisdiction. The city commission or council can change a speed limit, but that's on a road that they control, not a road the state or the Federal Highway Administration has any authority over.
Commissioner Dunn?
It sounds, it sounds insane to me. All of those calculations may work for vehicular traffic, but it's certainly not considering safety of pedestrians.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and I get it, but you know, it's, I guess in one aspect, it's out of our hands, but like, who do I talk to at MDOT? Because that's insane to me. It doesn't
Yeah, I
make
can
any
put you in
sense at
touch
all.
with I can put you in touch with our contact there. The other issue about the ski hill that we discussed was that they've determined that something like 97% of the traffic that goes by that area on any given day is local traffic. Even in the winter, when people are coming to the ski hill, the average is above 95%. So they're saying that the people speeding through there are the people that live in the area and they know the conditions. So we're not going to reach a lot of people that don't understand that there's an overflow parking lot at the bottom of that hill.
Right. Yeah, and I get it. It's just the idea that you can't lower a speed limit based on pedestrian safety is, it just seems like there's got to be a better way to do it. Because no one's going to voluntarily go slower there, even if they know. Yeah, I mean, I've caught myself doing it all the time. Yeah, I know there's mountain bikers crossing. Yeah, I know there's going to be skiers crossing, but I'm still usually doing close to 55. And, you know, sometimes I can catch myself and slow down. And, you know, obviously if I see people, I slow down, but to get people to go slower, you have to lower the speed limit and then enforce it. You can't expect people to voluntarily go slower when, you know, when the speed limit is what it is. So anyway, thank you for looking into it.
Commissioner Primo? Oh, you're on mute again.
Okay, for Dave. How many years ago was it when the city was on them to get a stoplight on Grove Street? Said it couldn't be done, but they ended up doing it. Second point is, when I'm coming down, the ski hill part doesn't bother me at all. It's as you start up the hill, they've got that snowmobile stuff on the road. And apparently a lot of the bikers and hikers think that means they can walk across anytime they want. Because the last time I came through there was a guy just started right across and there was traffic going both ways. I mean, it's just as much a problem up where you come out of the trailer park there and you're coming off it must be a bike path on that hill. So again, I don't think there's a clear answer, but I think they should also educate the people and the bikers that part of this is their responsibility. It's not all up to the drivers of the vehicles. That's it. Sorry, Andrea. Or, Joy.
No, thank you. That's a good point. I mean, would additional signage be an option? That's my first question. And then my second question is more of a very hypothetical, which is that if say the private owner of the ski hill or some private owner, you know, maybe it was even Rippling River, wanted to do say like a pedestrian bridge over the highway. And I realize there would be logistical issues to be dealt with that. Like, what would be the right of way issues with that? I mean, would that be something that could be worked through, or is that something that's?
So we did talk about that. We talked about the issues with the bike trailhead up the road and the fact that most of the trails people ride require you to cross the road. The trails on the east side of the highway, you've got trails that go up the mountain and trails that go through the river valley and end up over on the lake. Basically, you come out into the Cliffs Power Road that takes you back over to the bike path along the lake. So most people are crossing the highway, which presents a whole, you know, eventually it's something bad's going to happen. And they're aware of that. They've talked about that area, and you know, it's definitely an area of concern. I don't know what it's, you know, I don't know that there's any real proactive way to address it. They've been looking at it and talking about it for a while, and they don't have any solutions.
They being what, MDOT?
MDOT. MDOT knows about these. I mean, MDOT knows that whole corridor through there is problematic because of the speed and the curves, poor sight distance. And it's, I'm highly concerned that, there's gonna be something bad that's gonna happen in there, because like Wayne said, there's people that cross that don't really, there's young bike riders crossing there that don't understand the potential danger. And so this really, I'll turn these minutes over to the traffic advisory committee and, let them know that that is a concern, and maybe they can work with MDOT on some kind of proactive stuff. The bridge idea, we talked about that too. There used to be a bridge down at the ski hill, according to Ben. He said 30 something years ago, when Pete Odovero, maybe when it was not quite new, but it apparently he had some kind of a bridge down there at one point, and it got hauled off at least 30 years ago, according to our guy Ben at the MDOT. So, I do think the property owner can take some steps that will make that crossing a lot safer. And that is an opportunity. There is an opportunity for them to do that, because they control the access from the parking to the road, which is really the most critical access. That's where you're going to get somebody's attention, that before they ever step into the highway, that this is a dangerous crossing. So, how we communicate that, I'm not sure, but Eric brought up a good point, and that again, I'm really frustrated because I talked to them about their 2022 project for South Front Street. MDOT is really not, they've got a problem with that side of the street because that's where all the power poles are, and they're not very far off the private property right there. So they're saying they don't have room to create any extra pedestrian space on that side of the road, on that east side of Front Street. They did tell us yesterday, though, that they are going to pay for putting in sidewalk extension on the other side, from Hampton Street around the corner. And I think there's a little bit somewhere else, but they're still working on they're working on a new type of crosswalk and new type of push buttons, apparently, for the crossing at Genesee. So they are trying to do something, but it's really marginal. And I've been talking to the city engineer about that, the frustration with the fact that the other thing I want to know is if they can't set the speed zone down as you come into Marquette, because I think that's part of the problem in that corridor, is people are going 55, 60 all the way to the top of the hill when they're coming into Marquette, Shiras Hill. And so you're at the top of the hill. If you're going 55 or 60, you're supposed to be going 35 about 500 feet down the hill. So it doesn't really make sense that they don't have the speed zone lower farther out, because you only see the sign that you're supposed to be going 45 when you get on the other side of the hill as you're coming down at 55 or 60, and then you're at the bottom of the hill where you're supposed to be going 35. So I think maybe there's an opportunity for them to stretch the speed zones out there. I will ask them about that. Just the other thing, Mike Dunn brought up the question about Robert's rules, and can you discuss after making a motion before there's a second? According to the book, you can't. You're not supposed to discuss once you make a motion.
Before there's a second,
Right,
but after there's a second, you can?
yeah, just like you did today.
Okay.
And Mark Tran. So City Commission had a work session last week and they talked for a half an hour, 45 minutes about transit stuff that they each thought was important that was already in all of our plans. They had not looked at the plans that were done previously or the master plan, it appeared. So we're trying to bring them up to speed on that, but also I talked to Taylor Clip and he just said that whenever we get to the point where we're going to have a meeting, he would be glad to, you know, start coordinating with you guys. And I did talk to the director today and we're going to have a conversation tomorrow so we can get some kind of an estimate of the kind of high range of cost of having a transit route established on North 3rd down to the station downtown over to the hospital and around the NMU academic campus to the UC, something like that, and take it from there. Hopefully the City Commission will either designate a subcommittee or allow the Planning Commission to start coordinating some kind of discussions on that, but I'll keep you posted as we go.
Dave, just a point of clarification to the earlier point. So after a motion is made and it's seconded, do we have to like suspend the rules again to discuss, or can we, like today, we just kind of started discussing it? Is that okay?
After you've made a second?
Yeah.
What? Well, after you've made, there's a motion on the floor, so you won't suspend the rules.
So we
To
can just
discuss.
discuss it.
You can discuss it,
Okay.
yeah, at length at that point.
Okay, which was what we did. I just wanted to make,
Yeah.
I sort of had a moment of like.
And one more thing, not to beat this to death, but you know, I did pedestrian and bike way planning for 5 years for a transit or a transportation agency, and transportation bike pedestrian advocates have been frustrated for at least 20 or 30 years with this whole 85th percentile thing and been trying to change it and pretty much getting nowhere. So it's not something new. It's just you know, something almost insurmountable. It's everybody's almost everybody that's concerned with pedestrian safety is really frustrated with how that, you know, ends up impacting cities. Like that South Front corridor is a perfect example. You can't have a crossing where that bike path comes out with a mid-block safety refuge island or anything, because they say the numbers don't support it. The numbers don't, you would be slowing they got to move traffic through there's that volume of traffic, and you don't want to have that delay in there. And what, you know, there's lots of stuff in the book that explains why that makes sense, but it really doesn't seem to make perfect sense, does it?
Yeah, thanks again for looking into that. And
Yes.
yeah. Like we're all sitting in traffic jams in 553.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah.
Concerning the end of Craig Street there, after looking at it, I mean, obviously a pedestrian bridge wouldn't work at the Genesee crossing. I just don't think there's the space. Pedestrian bridge that is by Bothwell that goes over McClellan. And I was just trying to wrap my brain around it, thinking if any place to put a pedestrian bridge, that would be like the ideal location.
Where?
On the end of Craig Street where the bike path ends, over by Superior Vision.
To put a bridge?
Yeah, a pedestrian bridge in there, because then you'd have enough area on either side to make it so it's, you know, you don't have to go up on steps, that you could actually elevate it like you did on McClellan Street. And then it'd be really ideal then if you could do a sidewalk from the corner of Genesee down to the pedestrian bridge. Because as we know, as this new hotel opens up, as these new condos are being built, you're seeing a lot of this South Marquette development going on that it's just going to get worse. And there's just really no good, safe areas in there. And a lot of people from South Marquette cross that Genesee area. And it's just a ticking time bomb because you have people walking dogs, people going on the bike path, but it's just going to increase in volume and traffic. So, I mean, I just,
Yeah.
I don't know if anything can be discussed with the Department of Transportation about a bridge, pedestrian bridge like they got in McClellan, but that might be an ideal location for it.
That's a good idea. I don't know what they say about spacing. Like it's definitely far enough from the signalized intersection. They got to look at how far it is from the nearest signalized intersection, but people, there's all kinds of studies of how far people will walk to a signalized intersection versus just try to jaywalk or run across a highway. And that's far enough. I think it's a great idea, actually, and I'll bring that one up for sure. I thought they might be amenable to putting the refuge island in there, and why that makes sense is a lot of studies, and you can go out and watch it in cities that have bridges on expressways, urban expressways. I remember one by a high school. I was standing there watching. The students were running across the highway, dodging cars rather than going over a bridge that was there. And that's why they usually say, oh, they don't want to try to, they won't spend $1 million or whatever to put a bridge over a road like that because people are just going to run across the road anyway. But I think you got a good point. I think it's worth talking about and seeing if it's a possibility. Maybe that could even be built into a gateway to Marquette, because they've been talking about having some kind of a gateway project on that side of town for years. Welcome to Marquette. And people really miss the old
trestle.
iron trestle,
right?
Even though it wasn't pretty. Maybe that could be the new trestle, so it's something to definitely explore further.
Great. Well, this is great to get all the ideas flowing on this. Anybody else? Any other comments? All right. Well, great meeting, everybody. We can adjourn. Have a great night.